Welcome back to the deep dive. You ever get that feeling, like you're meant for something more? Like there's a gap between where you are and where you could be?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's what we're diving into today. Divine discontent.
Hmm. Fascinating concept, isn't it? This whole idea that dissatisfaction, something we usually see as like negative, can actually be a driving force for good.
Right. And we're exploring this through, an excerpt from this talk called Divine Discontent by Michelle D. Craig.
Oh, okay.
Now, before you think this is just a religious thing, just hold on. These ideas, they really resonate whether you're spiritual or not.
Yeah, absolutely. This feeling of wanting to be better, to strive for something more, it's a universal human experience, really.
Totally. And the talk starts with this really vivid story about young Michelle Craig walking barefoot up this super rough trail called, get this, the Boys Trail, just to toughen up her feet.
Wow.
I know, right? She even says, and I quote, as a young primary girl, that is what I thought I could do to prepare. I mean, how hardcore is that?
It's a powerful image for sure. And I think it speaks to something deeper than just like physical toughness. It's about preparing ourselves for the challenges and opportunities that life just throws our way. It's about building resilience, both mentally and emotionally.
I love that.
Yeah,
So it's not really about literal feet, but like preparing for our own, unique path. It's like she's getting ready for whatever life throws at her, right?
exactly. And that brings us to the heart of the matter. What exactly is this divine discontent?
Right.
The source material quotes Elder Neal A. Maxwell, who describes it as the gap we feel between who we are and who we have the potential to become.
Okay, so that resonates with me. I often feel that gap. Like I could be doing more, learning more, being more. How about you? Have you ever felt that?
Oh, absolutely. I think recognizing that this discontent isn't necessarily a bad thing is it's crucial. It's what
Mm.
pushes us to grow, to evolve, to step outside our comfort zones.
So it's not about wallowing in dissatisfaction, but like using it as fuel to propel us forward, right?
Exactly. However, the source material also highlights a potential pitfall, this feeling of wanting to be better. It can be twisted into something harmful.
Oh, I see where this is going. Like how sometimes that desire for improvement can turn into like crippling self-doubt or even comparing ourselves to others.
Precisely.
Hmm.
The source material describes how negative forces, whether internal or external, can exploit this feeling, turning it into paralyzing discouragement. That's when we get stuck in a cycle of inaction and self-criticism.
So how do we tell the difference? How do we know if it's divine discontent pushing us forward or discouragement holding us back?
That's a great question. And the source material gives us a powerful example through the story of Joseph Smith. In the early days of his religious journey, he was deeply troubled by his perceived shortcomings. He felt inadequate, just like many of us do at times.
Yeah, I can relate to that. We all have moments where we feel like we're just not enough. But what set Joseph Smith apart?
Instead of letting those feelings cripple him, he used them as a catalyst for action. He turned to Scripture, sought guidance, and ultimately received the revelation that led to the founding of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So his discontent, instead of leading him to despair, actually spurred him to seek answers and initiate a movement that impacted millions. That's fascinating. It's almost as if his dissatisfaction helped him achieve something extraordinary.
Exactly. And I think that's a key takeaway here. Divine discontent, when channeled correctly, can be a powerful force for positive change, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us.
It's so inspiring. But the talk also emphasizes that it's not about becoming, self-absorbed, right? It's not just about focusing on our own flaws or constantly comparing ourselves to others.
You're absolutely right. The source material highlights that this feeling should actually motivate us to look outward, to find ways to serve and uplift others. It's about using our desire for improvement to make a positive impact on the world around us.
And this leads us to the tie story, which, if you remember, is about Susan and the tie she made for President Kimball. She almost didn't give it to him, but then Sister Kimball said, never suppress a generous thought. So how do we know when to act on these generous thoughts? Sometimes it's hard to tell if it's the right time or if we're overstepping.
I understand, and the source material offers some reassurance here. It reminds us that charity never faileth. In other words, a good deed is never wasted, even if the timing isn't perfect or our efforts seem small.
That's comforting. But what about those times when we feel like we have nothing to offer? Like when we're dealing with our own struggles and barely keeping our heads above water, how can we possibly help anyone else when we feel like we need help ourselves?
That's when the message of grace comes in. The source material emphasizes that we are not alone in our struggles. We have access to a higher power, to divine help, to the support of others who can lift us up and empower us to move forward. Even when we feel like we're lacking, we can still find a way to contribute.
Okay, that makes sense. And speaking of not having enough, it makes me think of that incredible story in the Bible about the loaves and fishes, where they only had a tiny bit of food, but Jesus somehow multiplied it to feed thousands.
Exactly. And if we connect that story back to the theme of divine discontent, it's a powerful reminder that we may not always feel like we have enough to give, but if we offer what we do have to a higher purpose, it can be magnified and used in ways we never imagined. What seems like very little in our hands can become something much greater.
It's like saying, okay, this is all I've got, but I'm trusting that something amazing can happen with it. And then, bam, miracles happen. Okay, get ready for this one. The talk also quotes C.S. Lewis, and it's just too good not to share. It's this analogy about God rebuilding a house, but there's this twist at the end. He says, imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps you can understand what he's doing. He is getting the drains right and stopping the leaks in the roof and so on. You knew that those jobs needed doing, and so you are not surprised. But presently, he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably. You see, he is building quite a different house from the one you thought of us. You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage, but he is building a palace. He intends to come and live in it himself.
Wow, what a powerful analogy. And what's so striking about it is that it applies to us. God, or even just the forces of good in the universe, sees our potential even when we don't. And he's working to transform us into something greater than we can imagine. He's building a palace, not a cottage.
Mind blown.
Indeed. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our dive into divine discontent. We've talked about how this seemingly negative feeling can actually be a powerful force for good in our lives and in the world around us. But there's still so much more to explore.
And that's exactly what we'll do in part 2. So stay tuned, deep divers, because it's about to get even more interesting.
Welcome back to our deep dive into divine discontent. I'm excited to continue this exploration with you. We've established that this feeling, while often uncomfortable, can be a powerful catalyst for growth. But like any powerful force, it requires careful navigation.
Right. It's like we've got this awesome sports car, all this potential power under the hood, We could just floor it and see what happens, but chances are we'd end up in a ditch.
Exactly. And that's where the source material offers some really insightful guidance. It emphasizes that divine discontent is not about comparing ourselves to others or getting caught up in those feelings of inadequacy. It's about focusing on our own journey, our own potential.
So it's not about looking at someone else's shiny palace and feeling bad that ours is still under construction.
Precisely. Everyone's journey is unique. We all have different strengths, weaknesses, and experiences. The source material reminds us that comparing ourselves to others only leads to discouragement. And it steals the joy that comes from, focusing on our own progress.
That's so important, especially these days with social media, where everyone's presenting this perfect curated version of themselves. It's easy to get caught in that trap of comparison and feel like we're not measuring up.
Absolutely. And the source material offers a powerful antidote to that trap. It highlights the importance of humility and recognizing that we are all works in progress. It's about embracing where we are on our journey, knowing that we are continually evolving and growing.
So it's about accepting where we are right now, but still striving to be better, not getting complacent, but also not beating ourselves up for not being perfect. Kind of like finding that sweet spot between self-acceptance and, aiming for growth.
You've got it. And the source material emphasizes that this is where grace comes in, whether you believe in a higher power or simply the power of human resilience. It's through accepting ourselves, flaws and all, that we can access the strength to move forward and make positive changes.
That reminds me of something the source material mentions about weakness as actually being a blessing in disguise. It sounds counterintuitive, but it kind of makes sense when you think about it.
It's a fascinating idea, isn't it? When we recognize our limitations, we become more open to seeking help and guidance. It's in those moments of vulnerability that we can truly tap into our potential for growth.
Okay, so we've talked about how this divine discontent can be a catalyst for, personal growth. But the source material also emphasizes its outward focus. It's not just about improving ourselves. It's about using that desire to make a difference in the world.
Exactly. It encourages us to act on those generous thoughts, to look for opportunities to serve and uplift others. It reminds us that charity never faileth. meaning that even small acts of kindness and service can have a ripple effect beyond what we can imagine.
And sometimes those opportunities come in unexpected ways, right? It's not always about, grand gestures, but just being present for someone, offering a listening ear, or doing a small act of service. Little things can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And the source material reminds us that these seemingly small acts are often the most meaningful.
Yeah.
They can be the difference between someone feeling alone and feeling seen, between feeling discouraged and feeling hopeful.
So it's about tuning into those promptings, those nudges we get to reach out to someone, even when we're busy or feeling, overwhelmed.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from what we lack to what we can offer, no matter how small it may seem. And the source material uses the powerful example of the loaves and fishes to illustrate this point.
You mean that story where they only had a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish, but Jesus somehow multiplied it to feed thousands? What a mind-blowing miracle. It always makes me wonder, what if they had just said, nope, not enough, let's go home? What if they hadn't even tried?
That's a great point. And if we connect this to the theme of divine discontent, it reminds us that we may not always feel like we have enough to give. But when we offer what we do have with a willing heart, it can be used in extraordinary ways.
It's like saying, okay, this is all I've got. I'm not sure it's much, but I'm putting it out there. And then, bam, something incredible happens. It's like we're tapping into something larger than ourselves.
Precisely. It's about trusting that even when we feel inadequate, something powerful can work through us. And this ties back to the concept of divine discontent as a driving force for good. It's not about achieving perfection. It's about surrendering to the process of becoming.
It's like we're all works in progress, constantly being shaped and molded into something more beautiful and refined.
Exactly. And remember that analogy from C.S. Lewis about a house being rebuilt.
Yeah.
He so eloquently described this process as God taking a humble cottage and transforming it into a magnificent palace. It's like that with us, too. There's this incredible potential within each of us, just waiting to be unlocked.
It's such a powerful image, and it really speaks to the transformative power of divine discontent. It's not about settling for mediocrity. It's about embracing the journey of becoming our best selves, not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of everyone around us.
And that journey isn't always easy. It requires effort, commitment, and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones.
Yeah.
But remember, we're not alone in this process.
Right? We have access to support, to guidance, to the power of community and connection. We have everything we need to keep moving forward, even when things get tough.
And as we embrace this process, we'll find that the divine discontent that once felt uncomfortable can become a source of inspiration and motivation, propelling us forward on a path of growth and transformation. It's a journey worth taking, even with the bumps along the way.
This is so inspiring. It's like that nagging feeling of wanting to be better is actually a signpost pointing us towards a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Like it's a compass guiding us towards our true purpose.
Exactly. And as we learn to recognize and harness the power of divine discontent, we'll discover that it can lead us to experiences and accomplishments that far exceed our wildest dreams. It's a journey of endless possibility.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive so far. But before we wrap things up, there's one more crucial element to consider: the practical application of all this. It's great to talk about these concepts, but how do we actually put them into practice in our daily lives? How do we move beyond just thinking about it and start actually doing something with this incredible energy?
That's a fantastic question, and it's something we'll explore in detail in part 3 of this deep dive. We'll delve into specific strategies for channeling divine discontent into positive action, turning those feelings of wanting more into concrete steps toward a more fulfilling and meaningful life. So stay tuned. There's a lot more to uncover.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of divine discontent. And now it's time to get practical. We've talked about this incredible energy, this yearning for something more.
You're right.
But how do we actually use it to create positive change in our lives?
Yeah, that's the key question, isn't it? It's not enough to just, understand the concept. You need to translate it into action.
Right.
And the source material offers some really helpful guidance on this, emphasizing the power of small, consistent steps. It's not about making huge overnight changes, but about those little, baby steps that over time create a significant shift.
Okay, I like that. So it's about taking action, but starting small.
Yeah.
But how do we choose where to focus? It's easy to get overwhelmed when you think of all the things you could be doing.
Absolutely. And that's where discernment comes in. The source material encourages us to seek guidance, whether it's through prayer, meditation, or simply tuning into our intuition. It's about listening to that inner voice and trusting that we'll be led to the actions that are most aligned with our own unique purpose.
So it's like we have this internal compass, and if we listen closely enough, it'll point us in the right direction.
Exactly. And the source material also uh, reminds us to be patient with ourselves. Growth takes time. It's not, a straight line. There will be setbacks and challenges along the way.
It's like that barefoot hike up the boys trail from Michelle Craig's story. It's not going to be easy or comfortable all the time. But the journey itself is part of the transformation. Sometimes those tough spots are where we learn the most, right?
Absolutely. Those challenges are actually opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
It's through overcoming obstacles that we build resilience and a deeper understanding of ourselves. Think of it like working a muscle. It gets stronger when you push it to its limits.
But what about when those negative voices start creeping in, when we feel discouraged or like we're not, making progress? Those moments when we start doubting ourselves and wondering if we're even on the right path?
Those are the times to lean into grace. The source material reminds us that we're not alone in those struggles. Whether it's through our faith, our community, or simply our own inner strength, we have access to support that can help us through those tough spots.
It's like having a safety net,
Yeah.
knowing that even if we stumble or fall, we're not going to crash and burn. We can always pick ourselves up and keep going.
Exactly. And the source material encourages us to tap into that inner resilience, to draw upon our own strength and trust that we can overcome any obstacle. It's about believing in ourselves and our ability to grow.
I love how this all ties together. We started with this idea of divine discontent, which honestly sounded a bit negative at first.
Yeah.
But what we've discovered is that it's actually this incredible energy source, this internal drive that can lead to amazing things.
It's that yearning within each of us to be better, to do more, to become the best version of ourselves. And the source material we've explored today has given us some great tools for harnessing that yearning, for turning those feelings of wanting more into a life of purpose and meaning. It's about taking action step by step and trusting the journey.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember?
I'd say remember this. Divine discontent is not a burden. It's a gift. It's an invitation to embrace the journey of becoming, to step out of our comfort zones, and to strive for something truly extraordinary. And as we do that, as we lean into that journey, we'll discover just how much potential lies within each of us.
That's a beautiful thought. And to our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into divine discontent. We hope it sparked some new insights and inspired you to embrace your own journey of growth and transformation.
And remember, even small steps taken with consistency and a willing heart can lead to remarkable results. Don't be afraid to act on those generous impulses, to reach out, to serve, and to become the change you want to see in the world. You have the power within you to make a difference.
Until next time, deep divers, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world around us.